morning, Ms. Hofmeyer. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Are we ready?
We are indeed, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, I propose this morning to do a few things in anticipation of starting with the first witness. And the first is just to give an introduction to where we are in the evidence, and then to deal with an application and certain procedural matters. If I may begin then with where we are in the course of the evidence, because I indicated at the outset of the session that my proposal was to do a short introduction at the beginning of each new investigation area. Chair, today we take a slight detour from aviation matters, and we focus the attention of the Commission to Richards Bay, in fact, and the Mhlathu's Water Board. Chair, we will be exploring the conduct of the Water Board, particularly during the period 2015 and 2016. During this period, Ms. Duduzile Mieni was the chairperson both of the Mhlathu's Water Board and South African Airways. The investigation has revealed, Chair, what appears to be an elaborate scheme of looting designed to siphon monies out of the Water Board for the benefit of employees and officials within the Water Board. And there will be evidence over the next 2 days testifying to those features of the investigation. Chair, also during the period that we will be focusing on the Mhlathu's Water Board, there was an RDP housing project that was underway in Vrede in the Free State. Chair, some of the monies for that project had been paid from the state's coffers to the Free State Development Corporation, which is a corporation we've heard about previously in the evidence in this commission, particularly in the aviation stream. Again in 2015, it was at a point in time going to be securing funding of 15 billion for SAA. Those acts on the part of the Free State Development Corporation, you've previously heard evidence, was stopped in its tracks when National Treasury intervened. But it is again a place where Free State Development Corporation appears in the investigations of the Commission. Because what happened with the RDP housing project was that the Free State Development Corporation received certain funds and paid certain contractors from those funds who were appointed to the housing project. And amongst those contractors, Chair, was an entity trading as VNA Consulting. Now, part of what the Commission's investigations have sought to explore is whether there is any link between, on the one hand, an alleged 2 million rand that was supposed to have been paid, so the allegation goes, as a thank you fee to former President Zuma for his role in facilitating the appointment of certain of these contractors to the RDP housing project. And the question is whether there is a link between that allegation and, in that period, the activities of the Mhlathu's Water Board, Ms. Mieni, and those connected with her. Chair, the evidence will commence with testimony from Mr. Talente Mieni, who is the sole member of a closed corporation called Premier Attraction 1016. Premier Attraction is the entity to which VNA Consulting paid 2 million rand in June of 2015. Chair, the evidence will also include that of Mr. Mboniseni Majola. Mr. Majola was the program manager of Mhlathu's Water during the period that we are focusing on in the investigation. Mr. Mieni has been summoned to give evidence today, and Mr. Majola tomorrow. Chair, between their evidence, the legal team intends to present the evidence of another witness. This witness brings an application to give his evidence in a manner that will protect his name and his appearance from being publicly disclosed. His evidence will be heard by the public if his application is granted and heard by everyone in this room. But if he succeeds in his application, he will not have his name or his appearance publicly revealed. Chair, the witness is unrepresented. He was represented at a point of the Commission's engagements with him, but not for some period of time. And it is for that reason that the legal team of the Commission will move his application. I'm going to refer broadly to the application as his in-camera application, but it's important that I emphasize up front there are only two respects in which the witness seeks not to have his identity publicly disclosed. He does not want to give, he does not seek to give the content of his evidence purely in camera. Chair, there's a challenge with quite how to refer to a witness who brings such an application. The witness is currently deposing to an affidavit seeking to clarify this. What he seeks is that he be referred to as Mr. X in his evidence. Any reporting about his evidence similarly refer to him in that manner. And that affidavit, as I understand it, is currently being deposed to as a supplement to the application that he finalized and seeks to move this morning. He finalized that application only yesterday. Chair, just a bit of background to the processes followed in relation to that application and why it was only available yesterday. Finalizing the witness's evidence has not been an easy feat, Chair. And the reason for that is that, quite simply, he fears for his life in giving this evidence. The threat to him and his family in giving this evidence has been assessed by the Security Protection Services of the Commission and has been found to be real and credible. As of Saturday, he was placed in the custody of those services, and he was only able to meet with the legal team for the first time yesterday. After that meeting, his main affidavit was finalized and his application to bring this evidence in camera was also finalized. Chair, within minutes of that finalization and an appropriate redaction of the affidavit, notice was given to the persons who will be implicated in his evidence. That was done by way of email communication yesterday, and the notice was given to Mr. Talente Mieni, who will be appearing to give evidence today, Ms. Duduzile Mieni, Mr. Majola, who will give evidence tomorrow, and to former President Zuma. All of that notification went to their lawyers because they are on record as being represented by lawyers with the Commission at this stage. They were alerted to the fact that the application would be made this morning, and they were provided with a copy of the application. In a further effort to ensure that that application was received, Chair, this morning the Secretariat of the Commission made telephonic contact with all of those lawyers, and they have all indicated receipt of the application. Insofar as Mr. Talente Mieni is concerned, he is present and his lawyers are present here with him. I have not been advised that they have any response to the application, but I'm sure if they're afforded an opportunity, they will make that clear. Chair, with your leave, then I'd like to move that application, if I may, at the outset today, because depending on the ruling, certain arrangement will need to be put in place for the remainder of the morning.
The supplementary affidavit, are we able to place on record what it is going to deal with?
Indeed. I can do so.
Insofar as you are able to.
Indeed. I understand it is currently being deposed to, but
Yes.
an investigator of the Commission has confirmed with the witness
Yes.
that he is happy with its contents and that it is underway to be deposed to.
Yes.
The essence of it is that he explains that he filed an application yesterday to give his evidence in camera in the respects that I've described. He indicates that his name was disclosed in that affidavit prior to it being redacted. He then indicates that in order to navigate the evidence today and in order for it to be clear who brings the application, he requests that he be referred to as Mr. X in these proceedings and going forward in any publication in relation to this matter. And he makes it clear that he will sign this supplementary affidavit, but that he trusts that steps will be taken again to redact it before there is any publication of the affidavit by the Commission on its website or otherwise. And I will be updated in the course of the morning as soon as a copy of that has been secured, and we will hand it up to you, Chair, at the appropriate point.
Do we need to finalize this application before your your first witness gives evidence, or can it be dealt with later when we have got that supplementary affidavit with us?
We could certainly do it later.
Yeah,
Indeed.
let's do it when the supplementary affidavit is available.
Thank you.
I've looked at the prayers sought in the application. Maybe I can say this. If I'm satisfied that I should grant an order essentially protecting his identity and his name being disclosed, I think we could formulate a much shorter order.
Indeed.
Roughly something along these lines. One, the applicant's non-compliance with, then you can specify the rules, is hereby condoned. Two, the applicant, the applicant is to be referred to during his evidence and after his evidence, insofar as the commission is concerned, as Mr. X. 3, the applicant's name shall not be disclosed or published in any way. And 4, nobody may take pictures of the applicant nor have his pictures or image or appearance published in any way. The applicant need not be present at the venue of the hearing of the commission when giving his evidence, and may give his evidence from a secret location. Nobody other than the chairperson or members of the Commission's legal team or the security advisor of the Commission may approach the secret location from which the witness will give evidence without prior written permission of the chairperson. I think more or less something along those lines. It can be, when it's drafted, it can be dealt with more elegantly than I've been doing. I think that may cover everything, but
Indeed.
do go back to the notice of motion. If there are things that I haven't covered which you think are important, then you can just retain them.
Indeed.
But I think the formulation should
Yes.
more or less be along the lines that I've indicated.
Indeed,
It may
Chair.
be that the arrangement of the various orders
Yes.
of prayers may also be realigned. You can include the audio link part
Yes.
as well.
Thank you, Chair. What we'll do in preparation for moving that application later, once we're in receipt of the supplementary, is we
Yes.
may just put this in the form of a draft order
Yes,
for your
yes.
consideration,
Yes.
following the guidance you've given in relation to the formulation of the prayers. But we'll check if there's anything that in our view is still necessary to be included.
Yes, I had some concerns about 4,
Yes.
prayer 4,
Yes,
but
seems to me
if
unnecessary.
the applicant's concern is more about prayer 4 would allow that an implicated person gets to know him and so on. But I understand that he understands that may have to be done.
Yes.
So to the extent that he understands that, then there may be no problem. You can just
We'll confirm.
have a look at it again.
Indeed. We're
Otherwise,
indebted, Chair.
we can deal with it at a later stage.
Indeed.
Yeah.
If I may then just deal with 2 procedural matters before we commence with Mr. Mieni's evidence.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The first is in relation to another witness who was in fact scheduled to give oral evidence today. That was Mr. Khan, who was one of the engineers appointed on an engineering project for Mhlathu's in 2015. Chair, during Mr. Khan's evidence, it was the intention of the legal team of the Commission to refer to another affidavit of one of the closed corporations who was doing construction work on one of these projects for Mhlathu's water. That was an affidavit deposed to by Mr. Shange, who is the managing member of Mdima Civils. Now, Mr. Shange's affidavit implicated or may have implicated certain persons in acts of wrongdoing, and so notice was given on the 31st of January to those persons to alert them to the fact that reference would be made to Mr. Shange's affidavit. Chair, amongst the persons to whom notice was sent was Stefanuti Stocks, which was also a company involved in some of the construction works for Mhlathu's at the time. Stefanuti Stocks received notice on Friday the 31st of January. That is more than 14 days prior to today. But despite that, Stefanuti Stocks responded to the notice through a letter sent to the Commission on Friday afternoon. And it claims in that letter to have been prejudiced, despite the fact that it had been afforded the full 14 days in which to respond to Mr. Shange's affidavit. And it seeks, in essence, more time to bring any application that it may wish to bring in terms of Rule 3.3.6. The letter also notified the Secretariat that legal representatives for Stefanuti Stocks would be present today. They are indeed here, I've confirmed that, and that they would watch the evidence, take note of it, insofar as Stefanuti wanted to put before the Commission any version of its own. Chair, the letter states that receipt of the affidavit of Mr. Shange and notification on the 31st of January was the first time that it was disclosed to Stefanuti Stocks what allegations were being made against it and what the details of the affidavit contained. And the essence of their request is that they say they need more time to consider the allegations carefully, to identify people within Stefanuti who need to be consulted. They raise the fact that some of those people may no longer be in the employ of Stefanuti. They say their lawyers need to take instructions and their client needs time to source documents. Chair, the one thing that they don't say in their letter to the Secretariat on Friday is that the Commission's investigators have been engaged with Stefanuti stocks since October of 2019. They don't mention that there was a meeting with the Commission's investigator and Stefanuti stocks and its lawyers on the 22nd of October 2019. And they don't disclose that pursuant to that meeting, and at that meeting the areas of investigation were disclosed to Stefanuti, they don't disclose that after that meeting there have been numerous follow-ups between October and January by the investigators of the Commission seeking an affidavit from Stefanuti stocks giving its version of the events that are going to be revealed in the evidence over the next 2 days. Chair, therefore, to the extent that the request for this extension seeks to paint a picture that Stefanuti was only alerted to these matters when it first received Mr. Shange's affidavit on the 31st of January, it is simply false. Stefanuti has been well aware of these matters and that they were being investigated since October of last year, and has, as a matter of fact, missed every proposed deadline for submission of an affidavit to the Commission. To that extent, therefore, the legal team does not support the request for an extension because it is not adequately motivated and it omits material facts. Having said that, though, Chair, the legal team sees no reason why Stefanuti stocks should not give its version to this Commission.
Yes.
It is our submission that it should. We've been asking for it for some time. And if all that they seek today is an opportunity to bear witness to this evidence and give an affidavit in due course, certainly the legal team of the Commission would have no difficulty with that. But the notion that they get more than since October last year to present their version and make an application under Rule 3.3.6, the legal team of the Commission certainly does not support that.
Of course, if they sought an extension of any period, they would have had to bring a substantive application.
Indeed.
They have not brought any
No.
substantive application. You don't ask for an extension by simply sending a letter.
No, indeed.
That's not how things are done here.
Indeed.
Okay.
But we don't propose to take it further other
Yeah.
than to record their position publicly, as we
Yeah.
always do, and furthermore to invite them in due course if they wish to give a version to this Commission to do so.
Yes, thank you.
Chair, the final aspect of process is a matter related to Mr. Khan's evidence. Since the finalization of Mr. X's evidence yesterday, the legal team has evaluated the proposed witnesses who would have been appearing for the course of this week's evidence. And it is our proposal, Chair, that it is not necessary, in fact, to receive oral testimony from Mr. Khan. Let me just be clear, and this will unfold in the next 2 days. Mr. Khan's evidence, Mr. Shange's evidence, and the evidence of a Mr. Payton are all, in a sense, corroborative versions of the evidence that Mr. X will give if he is permitted to give it in the terms that he's requested. And in the interest of time and efficiencies in this Commission, the legal team does not believe it is necessary also to present Mr. Khan's evidence orally in the Commission. Of course, Chair, that is done as it always is done provisionally. If an aspect of his affidavit evidence, which will then be put to the witnesses who do testify, becomes contentious, there would always be an opportunity to revisit the need for him to come and give oral evidence. But it's our proposal that it is unnecessary at this stage, and pursuant to that, we would request that you release him from giving oral evidence today.
That is Mr. Shange.
Mr. Khan.
Mr. Khan.
Yes.
Yes. You propose to hand up his affidavit
Indeed.
at some stage?
Indeed.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Khan is released from the proceedings today.
Thank you, Chair. And then we
Okay.
can proceed with Mr. Mieni's evidence if all is in
Yes, let's do that. Will somebody call him?
order. Yes. I think he's present in the room, so he'll be
Okay,
coming forward.
all right. Take a seat there, Mr. Mieni. Please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Talente Cyril Mieni.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. As a matter of housekeeping, Mr. Mieni's affidavit and documents related to his evidence have been put together in bundle DD 27. May I request for the record that we enter it as Exhibit DD 27?
Mr. Talente Cyril Mieni's affidavit, together with annexures, will be admitted as Exhibit DD 27.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mieni, in front of you is a file containing what we will be referring to in this hearing as Exhibit DD 27. You'll see at the top right-hand corner of each page is page numbers printed in red. So when I make reference to a particular page, that's where you'll look in order to follow in your own copy of the file. And the other thing just to mention is just to make sure that that microphone is close enough to you so that your voice is sufficiently amplified in the course of the evidence. Mr. Mieni, can you clarify for us your position in the closed corporation Premier Attraction 1016?
I'm the sole shareholder and managing member.
Thank you. And how long has the closed corporation been in existence?
It was registered in 2007, somewhere there.
And what work does it do?
Mostly consulting work in various fields.
Can you give us a sense of those fields?
Property development, just various. When I registered the entity, really, it was, my first sort of entry into business. So I've done a lot of things over the years using the same entity: hospitality, events, etc. Many things.
Thank you. And what sort of annual turnover does the business have?
It has fluctuated over the years, so it's difficult to give a number. Some years have been better than others.
Can you give us a range?
It's difficult to say.
How many staff are employed?
At different points, different staff was employed. And again, there's no constant standard amount of staff that's employed. It really just depends. And also, in some of the projects, we don't need to employ full-time staff, so we sort of subcontract or get consultants in or whatever it is.
In 2015, how many staff did it employ?
I can't say for sure.
How would you be able to say for sure?
Maybe I'd need to check SARS records for maybe pay as you earn or something like that. And maybe, that would be, I don't really have the records.
Do you have a sense of 1 to 20, 30?
No, not 20, 30, maybe, I don't know. It's difficult to say. Really
What's
difficult.
the biggest number that the closed corporation has had over the years in terms of staff? The highest number that you remember that it reached?
I can't say, Chair. As I said, we would employ people on a project-by-project basis. Some would be permanent, some not. So it's 2015. I really cannot recall what.
No, I'm not talking about 2015. I'll just talk about the entire period since it was registered. What's the highest number that you can remember to say, well, the highest number of staff that I've ever had is 10 or 20 or 7?
It's difficult to say, Chair, because also I run a number of businesses, so to pinpoint who's employed where at any given point is quite difficult. So I don't want to say a number and then it's not the number.
Would your staff under this CC also help in other businesses that you have other than this CC?
Yes, that's. Yes.
And what's the lowest number it has ever had?
It would always have one, which is myself. Which is myself as a managing member. And
yes.
So it will always have at least one.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's one other than yourself as a member of the CC.
No, I'm saying it will always have me.
Oh, okay,
employed.
but sometimes you would have somebody else.
Yes, sometimes there's other people.
Okay, sometimes it would just be yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And where are its offices?
Okay, currently we are in Sandton, based in Sandton.
Where were you previously?
It's always been in Sandton, but we've just moved to various offices within the Sandton area.
Have you ever had offices at Design Quarter in Fourways?
No.
And have you ever employed a Mr. Mokotong?
Do you want to spell that name?
Certainly, Chair. Thank you for the reminder. That's Mokotong.
Can you say the first name, please?
Yes, Moketsi.
Oh, yes. No, never employed them, no.
Okay.
But we were in a business relationship with them.
We'll come to that.
Sure.
Mr. Mieni, you received a Regulation 10.6 directive from the chairperson of the Commission requiring you to give the Commission on affidavit all the information that you had available to you, your knowledge of and your records of 2 sets of transactions. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And what I'd like to do in your evidence is focus on those 2 sets of transactions. And I talk about them as 2 sets because there is a transaction, the one that I referred to in the opening of the evidence, where V&A Consulting paid 2 million rand to Premier Attraction.
Sure.
That occurred in June of 2015. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Thank you. And then the second set of transactions are payments made later in 2015 and early 2016 from Premier Attraction to an entity called EC Bonello. Are you aware of those transactions?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. So let's start with the first set. That's the payment from V&A Consulting to Premier Attraction. Do you recall the date on which that payment was made?
No, I know I received but I don't recall what date it was now.
You've
Sometime
actually,
in 2015, though.
Yes, it was the 19th of June 2015.
Okay.
Just to refresh your memory.
Sure.
Now, if we go to your affidavit that you provided to the Commission in response to the directive, you'll find that at page 1 of Exhibit DD 27.
Okay.
I'd like to pick it up at paragraph 3 there. Could you please indicate to the Chair and the Commission what you indicate in that paragraph is your best recollection about that payment?
Sorry, please say that again.
Could you please indicate to the chairperson what you state in paragraph 3 is what your best
Yes.
recollection was in
Yes.
relation to that payment?
Yes, it is, Chair.
And what was that? Why did you receive the payment?
Must I read what I've said? Or?
You
You can
read it, or
you can just say it.
So we were involved in a housing development in Mpumalanga, private housing development, and we were rendering some services, consulting services, through Premier Attraction, and we received that payment for work done.
And the reference to Mpumalanga is a reference to the Mpumalanga province.
Province, yes.
Yeah, okay. No, in KZN there's a township called Mpumalanga.
Oh, right. So we're talking about the province here, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more? What was the project about?
Well, it was a project specifically to build housing for, I don't know how you classify, but it was workers, sort of government workers for like nurses and teachers, etc., that kind of level. And they would then be assisted to secure bonds to buy those properties, but they were being developed with a specific purpose to looking at their affordability, etc. And I think in that area, there was a shortage of properties of that nature. So that really was what it was.
What particular area?
I forgot the name of the area now in Mpumalanga. I don't want to guess the name. It might have been Mzinoni, maybe. I forgot.
What was the name of the project?
I don't think it had a specific name. It could have been the name of the area, housing development. So if it was Mzinoni, it would be Mzinoni Housing Development.
Do you remember what extension of Mzinoni?
No, I don't.
And where was it located? Did you ever visit the
In
site?
Mpumalanga, no. Our work didn't require us to really visit the site.
And just give us a little bit more insight. What particular services did Premier render to V&A in relation to the project?
Mostly design work for the actual structures, for the actual houses.
And how many people did you have working on the project?
There was a lot of people working on the project. A combination of people from V&A and Premier Attraction. I can't recall the number now, but there was a couple of people that were brought in.
And what was your role?
I was managing the work from the Premier Attraction side.
And who did you deal with at V&A?
I dealt with Mr. Naika, maybe, is her name? Mr. Vikash, I know his first name is Vikash. Mr. Vikash Naika, I
I think his surname is Narsai.
Oh,
Is
Narsai,
that correct?
yes.
For the
yes.
record, that's spelled Narsai.
Yes. Apologies.
Not at all. And anyone else?
Yeah, there were a couple of people that we worked with. I can't recall who they are now.
And how long had you known Mr. Narsai?
I can't recall.
Had you known him before this work?
Yes, definitely.
For a number of years before that?
I can't recall. I don't know if it was a number of years, maybe not years, but it had been some time prior.
And had you worked together before this project?
No, I don't think so.
Now, at paragraph 4 on page 1 of your affidavit, you say V&A Consulting was the main independent contractor and/or consultant for the said project. And then at paragraph 5, you say Premier Attraction was subcontracted by V&A. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you go on and you describe in paragraph 5 what Premier Attraction was contracted to do. You say there, and I quote, it was subcontracted by V&A as consultants to, quote, carry out some of V&A's services or scope of work in respect to the above-mentioned project. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think the evidence you gave a moment ago was that the work that you were doing was design work on structures. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the arrangement insofar as fees were concerned for Premier's work?
Well, we agreed on scope of work, and I assume, we'd have agreed on scope of work and then the fee for that work.
What
There
was the
formula.
arrangement?
There was no formula. When you say arrangement, what do you mean?
For the fees.
At what rate was your close corporation going
so
to be
we just had
paid and so on? What was that's what she's talking about.
Yes. So apologies. So we did not have like an hourly kind of, it wasn't like that arrangement. So we had a set amount of money that we were going to receive and a set of services that we had to do, and that was it.
What was the amount that you were to receive?
2 million rand.
2 million rand. And how were you going to account for that 2 million rand?
Account in what?
Were you
what
going
sense?
to...
What were you going to do? How much work were you required to do in order to earn the 2 million rand?
Yeah, so it was the scope of services that we would have had at the time, which I obviously can't recall exactly now what it was, but that's how we were going to account. We were going to deliver on the work that we had to do.
But you have no recollection of precisely what that work was?
Yeah, mainly it would have been around design, space planning, planning whether to have single-story, double-story houses. Yeah, I can't really recall exactly what it was, but it would
And
be
over
around that.
And over what period were you going to be doing this work that would earn you 2 million rand?
Well, it would have been as quickly as we could finish the work, I guess. There was no really defined period, but I'm sure the development itself as a whole had a period, defined period of when it needed to reach certain milestones. But for us, and maybe at the time we did have a time, I really can't recall the exact details.
Do you have a sense of when you started this work?
No, I don't have a sense of the times exactly, but it would have been at the beginning of the development.
When was that?
I don't know. I can't recall.
Well, the payment was in 2015, isn't it?
June 2015.
June 2015.
Yes, but it could have been even in 2014 that the development would have, or the developer would have said to VNA, here is a contract, this is what we're looking for, because it's quite involved. Chair, this thing involves bulk earthworks. You have to figure out where the pipes are going to run. It's quite a lot of work. So, yeah, I can't really say when and how long and all of that.
So do you know whether at the time when you received the payment, you had completed your part of the work?
I would assume yes. We would have
Yes.
completed our work.
But you can't remember when you may have completed, which month and so on.
No, I can't.
Yes, okay, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been sent a note, Mr. Meany, if you wouldn't mind raising your voice a bit when you speak.
Sure.
It's just not being recorded as well as it should be.
Sure.
Can you help me then, Mr. Mieni, with what the SACP CMP is?
I'm not sure what that is.
You're not sure. Do you know the South African Council for Project and Construction Management Professionals?
Not really, no.
No. Do you know that they are a body that publishes guidelines for the scope of services on these types of housing projects?
Okay.
So you don't know that?
No.
Right.
Maybe before you proceed, Ms. Hoffmeyer, Mr. Mieni, from what you have said in your affidavit, it appears that effectively you say you were subcontracted by VNA, is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Did you subcontract the work further to somebody else, or did you do it yourself?
Yeah, so we would have brought in other consultants to come in and do certain aspects, maybe of work that we couldn't do in-house or whatever it would have been.
But you would not have subcontracted it as such. You would have brought in people to help you do the work.
Yes, so similarly, even with this subcontracting, I don't think it's, we must define it as strongly as subcontracting per se, but we were brought in to provide certain skills and to do certain work towards the project. So similarly, if we needed to also bring in certain, skills or expertise, we would do that.
So you say your arrangement might not have been subcontracting in the true sense.
Yes, yeah. Yes. anticipate that would be asked questions about it 5 years later. I mean, if I had to keep records of everything from 2017, that would be quite a lot of records to keep.
There's usually a statutory reference to companies that they keep records for 5 years. Is that not a provision that you've put in place in your...
No, not necessarily. Mostly the kind of work that we do, that to keep them that long.
You also in your affidavit that you have no email communications either. See at page 2, you say at paragraph 7, do not have any email communication relating to these payments, as I did not keep any records in respect thereof. Can you just help me with what that means? Keep it.
I think maybe that's not capturing what we were trying to say. Answering to a question around, do you have any emails, do you have any records, etc. So I think we did it to one, but basically what I was saying is that I went through my emails since changed laptops and computers multiple times. And I codes of any of the documents, whether it would be the agreement that spoke of, etc.
I understand. Can you just help me with another acronym? Who PROXA is?
No, I don't.
It would be news to you to learn that there's a professional consultant services agreement committee, would it?
Sure, yes.
So it would be news to you if you'd signed an agreement that was signed by PROXA, if you didn't know PROXA.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, just trying to get the chronology a bit clearer here. The payment was June 2015, right? Can you give us some idea of when VNA first engaged you to supply the project?
I don't know what to say except it would have been before the payment.
That certainly be the case, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And I assume from your evidence you identified VNA as the main contractor.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Ms. Hofmeyer. We have
Maybe
had
not.
lots of evidence where payment comes before work.
Mr. Mieni's, he can't be more specific than to say the agreement would have been concluded payment. Are you comfortable with that evidence?
Yes, yes.
And the other thing I want to do just to try and help with the chronology is if it was the main contractor and you were in a relationship with the client would have been established first, then they would have brought you in and at some later received the payment. Is that a fair description of the chronology?
Sorry, again?
So, we've already established in your evidence your agreement with VNA would have preceded the payment on the 19th of June 2015. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes.
And then I said your evidence before the Commission has been that VNA was the main contractor,
Yes.
that you were then brought in by VNA. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, explain why?
Because I know the client.
Right. Sorry, I thought that your evidence earlier was that VNA had contracted you. You
Yes.
didn't want to use the formal term
Yes.
subcontracted.
Yes.
So that led me to conclude that their arrangement with the client would have preceded your involvement. But is that not the case?
No. Because
So
I know
how
the
did you
client.
become involved?
Involved in what exactly?
To
In the
provide the
project.
services?
In the project.
So okay. Things change.
Yes.
To provide the services and in the project are two different things.
Yes.
So in terms of the project, I know the client, I know the project owner. And presentations and discussions, which I don't remember how they really went. And maybe, as you said, these bodies that you talk of, that would have been why VNA would have been the contract to the client, to the project, to fulfill all those things that I assume they had. Then
Maybe.
they brought us in separately. But
Yes.
I've always knew the project owner, the developer.
Yes, that's fine, but it's a chronology, because your consistent testimony has been VA is the actor and then they bring you in. So in terms of chronology, I want to clarify, they would have been appointed as the main contractor, then they brought you in, and those two events must have happened before the 19th of June 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, but it doesn't mean that it will follow that.
Or VNA was the main contractor?
So when I say brought in, brought us to contract with us, or whatever we'll call it. But,
Any involvement in the project, involvement at the request of VNA.
no other involvement in the project.
So your own involvement in the project was your arrangement with VNA.
Yes.
So it's correct to say VNA brought you into the project. That's right.
Not into the project, because I already knew of the project and I knew the developer of the project. I just didn't have a role in services to play.
No. When I say brought you in, firstly, you were the one who used that terminology that brought you in. I mean, for purposes of doing the work that we talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, they brought you in for purposes of doing.
And who was the client?
Company name, but Moketi would have been
Mr.
one of
Mokotong.
yes, Moketi Mokotong.
Mokotong,
Yes,
apologies.
yes, and he had a partner at the time.
When do you recall your first interactions with him about the project?
Oof, I can't say, but I've definitely known them longer than I knew VNA. But about the project.
The committee also engaged a Mr. and VA consultant payment.
Sure.
And Mr. Narsai's recollection of the events around the project is different to yours.
Okay.
Does that surprise you?
It definitely surprised me. Yeah.
Narsai says is he says was the development manager to Octec. You appointed various consultants, you being Premier, appointed various consultants to do work on the private housing development, and that in early 2015 approached VNA to take over management of the project. And Mr. Narsai has provided the Commission with interview. He says is all of the reports that you, Premier, arranged the people that you'd brought in to assist is when you over from Premier, you provided him this wad of documents on all sorts of scoping, development, there's electricity, there's as Premier, as the development manager. It's you getting all the role from you. All reports, and it is because you hand over that yes. Does it he of course has a what does this becoming familiar with his version help to your memory?
Yeah, it does. Mr. Nas, unfortunately, that's what. So those documents, whichever they are, all of that. So that should tell. Came from So as to whether the came through VNA Consulting, work that we know us being involved with it prior to those reports. I can assure you my signature. That I can show.
Do you know it's not on the documents?
Because I did not look
But how do you know what reports I'm referring to?
at what else that you mentioned. So when it comes to those things, that's what I'm specifically pointing to.
Are you able to say that there was never any report that bore your name in relation to this project?
I can't say there was never any report because obviously we had on being electricity and of our scope.
And do you have that work you did?
No.
And VNA is that all of these various plans that I'll take you to now were provided.
It would have been possible.
Are you saying that it is possible that you did provide this document to him after you had obtained it from the developer?
Yes.
Okay. Is it also possible that other documents that he may be referring to maybe documents that you did provide to him after obtaining them from the developer?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right.
And who was the developer?
Mr. Mokotong, I just forgot the...
Optics.
Yes, Optics.
Was it Optics?
I remember now, yes.
So just explain to me, why would the developer Optics give you documents to give to VNA?
Depending on when they would have given it to me, it's because we're working together.
It sounds like you would be receiving them if you were the manager, doesn't it? Why else would you receive them, to give them on to a main contractor?
Well, because I knew the developer prior. I think we had a long-standing relationship, or better relationship than VNA. So it's not a surprising thing. And also, although VNA had offices in Johannesburg, they were based in Durban. So the developer was based in Johannesburg. I'm based in Johannesburg. So I think it would be easier to share information. And sometimes information is quite thick to be emailed, etc. So I don't see.
Ms. Meany, I understand that if you and Optics are located in Johannesburg, it might be easier, save for the advances of email technology, for Optics to share documents with you in Johannesburg. But we're talking about why you would have been the one to give documents to VNA in Durban in circumstances where the main relationship is between Optics and VNA.
We were part of the project, man. I don't see what would be wrong with sharing of information.
I'm probing the logic of it, Mr. Mieni. Your evidence is that VNA was the main contractor to
Yes.
Optics.
Yes.
On what possible basis would Optics give you documents relevant to the project when you played a subordinate role to VNA?
As I said, I can't answer that question, but maybe to say, because the documents are thick, as I think we can see, to email them is a bit difficult, so maybe they would have sent it to me, and I would have then met with VNA at their offices whenever they were in Johannesburg, and to discuss them or to work through them. I have no idea. I can't tell you why, but there is no thing about it to say why they sent the documents to me. I was part of the project. And as I said, I had an established relationship with the developer prior and even outside of this development. So I don't see an issue.
Mr. Mieni, I need to put it to you that it is highly improbable that the client in this arrangement would have had difficulty emailing reports to their main contractor, and as a consequence of that, gave them to you to give to the main contractor when the main contractor happened to travel up to Johannesburg for a meeting to look at the reports. Do you
Okay.
have a response to that?
So, as an example, with a document like this, so this document has been reduced to A4 size. Normally, these documents you lay out on the table. So, maybe that's the reason why I would have received some of the documents, because you couldn't email them, as I've been trying to say. But, yeah, other than that, I can't say why they would have sent it to me, except for the fact that I was part of the project and I would have had to be privy to some of these documents.
Why? You said you had nothing to do with sewer works or electricity.
Yeah, I never...
So why would
but
you
I
have to have seen these
but
documents?
you have to be privy to documents. Well, okay. So when you have to design the development, or you put together your structures, etc., as I had mentioned, that you have to decide what the structures must look like, etc., etc., you have to understand where your sewer lines run. You have to understand where they're planning the roads to be. So you have to at least see the documents. All I said was, I did not compile these reports and documents. Doesn't mean I never saw them.
So you worked with them.
It's possible, yes, that I will do them.
Do you recall working with these documents?
I recall working with a lot of documents, yes. With a lot of documents on the table that we would look at and decide certain things.
And just to be clear again, you have absolutely no records of your design work on these structures.
Maybe Mr. Nasrai has, but I don't.
I beg your pardon, maybe?
Maybe VNA Consulting has, because we would have sort of sent everything to them. They would have then compiled the final sort of document, and so maybe they have, but I don't have any records on my end.
And just to go back to what VNA has said to the Commission and Mr. Nasai. So you'll recall the one bone of contention or conflict is you say they were the main contractor and you were brought in by them. They say the reverse was the case. You were initially appointed as the development manager, but handed over to them at a point in 2015.
Sure.
Can I just be clear? Your testimony today is VNA is incorrect in its description of the events.
Yes, and I'd urge anyone to bring a document to reflect that I was the main contractor and passed it on to them. Anybody who has that information, please.
But you do
Because
recall
definitely-
an agreement being concluded, is that right?
I said I'm not 100% sure whether we concluded an actual agreement and what it would have looked like. I just know that we would have received a scope of services and we would have agreed an amount to be paid. But between the developer, Optics, and Premier Attraction, there is no agreement appointing us as a main contractor.
So what agreement was there
Well,
between Optics and Premier?
I don't know. I don't recall what agreement they would have given.
Well, Mr. Mayor may be meaning agreement written or oral. In other words, what were the terms of the agreement as you remember them, whether it was a written agreement or an oral agreement? What's your recollection of the main terms and conditions of your engagement by VNA?
There would have been a scope of services, Chair, and there would have been an amount agreed. I can't say exactly.
It would have
today
been,
what
here
it
is the scope of the work
Yes.
that you must perform.
Yes.
And if you do that, maybe if you finish it within a certain time,
Yes, Chair.
then you will be paid 2 million rand.
Yes, Chair.
Okay?
What was the period of time you had to complete the works?
I can't recall.
And this is the agreement between yourselves and the developer, Optics, is that correct?
No, with VNA Consulting, as per the Chair's question.
Apologies.
Yes, I was talking about the VNA and his close cooperation.
Right. And your relationship with Optics, how was that agreed?
Agreed in what sense?
Well, did you have an agreement about the role you would play directly to Optics,
I don't think I would have had an agreement with Optics.
despite the fact that them using you to get documents to VNA?
They were not using me to get documents to anybody, ma'am.
Apologies, I thought your testimony a moment ago had been that the reason why Optics didn't just give these documents directly to its main contractor, VNA, was because you were utilized to give the documents to VNA. Did I have that evidence incorrect?
I was simply just trying to give you a picture of the possibilities. As I said, I don't recall. All I said to you, though, is that because I know what I would and would not have done in terms of work. I know my limitations, skill level, expertise, etc. So I would have never been a main developer or development manager because I've never provided that service as a company in my entire sort of career. Similarly, the reports that you referred to about electricity, etc., we wouldn't have done that. So that's what I was simply saying. And then in terms of them using me to get documents, I don't think that is putting it correctly. I was simply saying a possibility would be, because they are based in Durban, documents will be sent to us because we are all working together. Also, some of these documents are actually not A4 as you see them. That's why it's difficult to even see and read them because they actually are much bigger than this. So, yeah. That's fine.
Optics, just as I understand it from your evidence, was the client in
Yes.
this arrangement.
Yes.
Is that correct? Or why then was your relationship not directly with the client?
In what way? must it
Well,
be directly with the
you've
client?
explained that, pursuant to the question I asked, that there was no agreement between yourselves and Optics. I want to understand why that was not the case.
Maybe there were some services that we just didn't have the expertise to provide.
But why can't
maybe
they-
there was the certain experience that we didn't have, so that's why we would have gone, or they would have gone with a VNA who's done projects of this scale. So we were a small emerging black company, just being given an opportunity, really. So, we didn't have years and years of experience in this. So
No,
that's
I'm
why.
not suggesting, Mr. Bieni, that you, contrary to VNA's case,
Yes.
were the development manager, because I understand you to say you reject Mr. Narsai's version,
Yeah,
that you played that role.
Definitely.
I'm interested in why, for your specific scope of services, there wasn't an agreement between yourself and Optics.
Because our work was based on the scope that would have been given to VNA. So VNA would have given us a portion of their scope of work. So there would have not been a need per se to have an arrangement with optics. I don't know. But
And-
maybe we might have. I really can't recall what we would have had and not had with optics, because as I said, I've known Mr. Mokotong and his partner for some time. So we've had many dealings and discussions, and I mean, you start companies and they don't work out, and so there could be a lot of information floating around out there that I can't recall today. But specifically in regards to this project, that's what I'm answering. So I don't want to answer generally and broadly and then...
No, I'm
There's
certainly not
something.
requesting a general answer. I'm requesting a very specific answer about whether there was an agreement between yourself and Optics.
It's possible. I
It's
don't
possible
know.
you
I can't-
don't recall.
I can't say.
You were doing work to earn a fee of 2 million rand, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that not something you would want to have committed to writing, the terms on which you would be paid, etc.?
Yeah. Sure.
Yes, but you didn't commit it to writing.
As I'm saying, it's possible we did, but I can't recall, and I don't have that document with me.
Right.
But it is very possible that we did.
Let us then go, if we may, to a few more of these reports. You'll find at page 47 of exhibit...
Maybe this is the right time?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. We'll take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 11:30. We adjourn.
VNA have indicated to the Commission you provided to them because of subcontractors you had secured to do various works on the project. Before I take you there, can I just clarify, your evidence today is that you did not subcontract these various entities who provided reports. Is that correct?
Which various entities?
The ones that I thought you said previously you did your own work as Premier. You didn't subcontract to any people doing sewer or electricity or quantity surveying on the project. Is that right?
Sewer, electricity, quantity surveying, no.
No. Okay, let's go through each of them so we can be absolutely clear about your evidence, right? Let's go to Exhibit DD 27 at page 47, 47.
Sure.
Do you see that?
Yes.
It appears to be a budget report prepared by QS Consult Africa. Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that an entity known to you?
No.
And can you help us with what this document is?
So it's the budget report?
Is this a document you'd seen previously?
It's possible.
But then let's just clarify your relationship with QS Consult Africa. Did you have any relationship with them?
No.
No. They weren't brought into the project at your behest.
No.
But you may have seen this budget report before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let's go to the next one at page 50, 50. What is that document?
It says the professional services contract.
Is this a document you've seen before?
It's possible. I don't know.
Do you recall having provided it to VNA Consulting?
Us providing it to them?
Yes.
No. We would not have provided them because we're not the employer.
Thank
So
you.
I don't
And
think
then if we go to page 148, there's a further report. This is still in Exhibit DD 27. What is that document?
It says scope of work for project works.
Is Project Works an entity known to you?
No.
No. So did you procure Project Works to prepare this report?
No.
Is it a report you'd seen prior to today?
It's possible.
But again, your evidence is you did not get Project Works involved on this project, correct?
Yes.
And you did not submit this report then to VNA as evidence of the work that you had done on the project, correct?
Sorry, please repeat that.
You did not provide this report to VNA as evidence of the work that you had done on the project?
No.
No. And as evidence of work that you had arranged to have done on the project?
Arranged.
I'm drawing a distinction between Premier itself
Yes.
doing the work and you organizing for Project Works to do the work. Did you organize for Project Works to do this scope of works?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, until this point, you've been very clear that the previous reports you were not responsible for procuring. Is the situation different in relation to Project Works?
So what I'm clear about is in relation to Premier Attraction, but any other work that would have been outsourced, I'm not clear about that.
But Premier Attraction didn't outsource that work. Is that correct?
Which work?
The work of Project Works that we see in this report.
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't think so. No.
You don't think so? Your evidence is not. Right. Let's go to the
hang
next
on.
one.
I think Ms. Hofmeyer wanted to establish whether you are as categorical in regard to this work, this report, as you have been with regard to the others. I noticed that you say you don't think you did. Is that because you are not sure, or are you quite clear
Yes,
that
so
you did not provide such work?
Yes, so I don't know what this report is for. I don't know what the work that was done here. So,
Oh, okay.
So when she listed SUA,
Yes, you are
direct,
clear about
so I'm
that.
clear. So I don't know what project works did.
Yes, okay.
So I can't say for
Yes,
sure whether we
okay.
would have or not.
That's
Well-
fair enough.
Does it not follow,
I'm
though,
trying to-
if you don't know what Project Works did, that you then did not provide this as evidence of the work that you arranged be done on the project by Project Works?
Please repeat that now.
Apologies. I'm just trying to get a sense, as the chair is following up on, precisely what you are certain about and what you are not certain about. Okay. I understand you to be certain that Sewer Works, Premier Attraction, was not responsible for getting contractors to do that work. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then we looked at the budget that was prepared by QS Consulting, and again, you were quite clear in your evidence. Premier Attraction did not engage QS Consult Africa to do that work, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Just, you must give the
Yes.
answer so that the record reflects it.
Yes.
Now we've moved to another set of the documents that V&A says you provided to them as evidence of all the many contractors Premier was engaging to do work on the project, right? You've already given evidence that that account by V&A is false. Is that correct?
Yes. It is.
Right.
It is
So now
false
let's
that-
go to this one, which is the Project Works report. What is your evidence in relation to the Project Works report? Did Premier subcontract to Project Works to prepare this report?
No, I don't think we would have subcontracted to Project Works because the entity is not coming to me, so I don't think so. I could say it's highly unlikely, let me put it that way. But it does not mean that I would not have handed the document over to V&A from the client. Those are two different things.
They are indeed. So I understand your evidence to be, it might have been that you handed over these documents.
Yes.
But is it your evidence that in doing so, it was not because you had subcontracted
Yes.
Project Works to do this work for the
Yes.
project? Is that correct, Mr.
Yes.
Mieni?
Yes.
Thank you. That does clarify matters. Let's go to the next report. It's at
Yeah,
page...
I'm sorry. So if you did hand over this document to V&A, is the position that you would have done so simply because you would have been asked by the developer to hand it over,
Yes, Chair.
and not because your close cooperation was involved in giving Project Works any work to do?
Yes, Chair. Yes,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. And then let's go to the next report. That's at page 153 of DD 27. What is this document?
It says Water and Sewer Infrastructure. It's a scoping report.
And who prepared it?
Sifako Capital Investments.
Is that entity known to you?
Yes.
Did you bring them into the project to do this work?
Bring them into the project to do the work. No, I don't. No. They would have been brought in by Optics because this is a separate. As I said, we were not involved in sewer,
Correct.
so it would have been an Optics.
And then let's deal with, I think, the last one, which relates to electricity. You'll find that at page 199. What is that document? Apologies, Mr.
Okay. Yes.
Mieni. Page 199. Can you assist us with what that document is?
Scope of services. Okay, it's bulk electricity. Something around bulk electricity. It's not quite clear.
And who has, on the face of this
Well,
document?
it appears to be a letter from Mr. Robert Zitzman addressed to Oclix Pty Limited, and the subject matter is proposed scope of our services for township development projects. Is that right?
Yes, yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Do you know Mr. Zeitzman?
No,
Do you know the entity GeoPower?
no.
And again, was GeoPower a company that Premier was responsible for bringing into
No.
the housing development project?
No.
Have you seen this document before?
I can't recall now. It's possible.
And again, I take it you'll give the same answer. It may have been that you provided this document to V&A. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
But you would be doing so on behalf of Optics. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Thank you. And then can I just clarify, so we're on the same page about your previous testimony. Your evidence was there was no agreement directly between Premier and Optics. Is that correct?
No, I said there was no agreement between Premier and Optics relating to us being or managing the development or being the lead, whatever it would have been. But I'm not saying there's no agreement between Premier and Optics. Because I said the directors and shareholders are known to me and we have engaged in many or tried to do many business opportunities together. So there could very well be an agreement somewhere floating around, but in relation to this project, no.
So in regard to this project, there was no agreement between the two?
Between us and Optics
yes,
as
in
the
regard
lead.
to this project.
Yes, that's with being the lead.
Or would there have been any agreement between you and them in regard to any role at all in the project?
It's possible, Chair, but I can't
You can't
recall.
remember.
And
Okay.
I don't think there would not have been a need because
Yes.
our role and services were specifically coming through V&A Consulting. So I don't
Okay.
think so.
Were you ever appointed as Optics representative?
No.
And just to be clear, you were contracted by V&A. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to take you to the version that V&A has provided to the Commission. And for that, you need to go to, in the same bundle, DD 27, and it commences at page 8.
Page 8.
8 of Exhibit DD 27, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, just to give the background to this document, there was a summons issued to V&A in relation, seeking documents related to this payment. And the response that you see at page 8 is the response from V&A's attorneys. Pursuant to receiving the response, the Commission was in contact with V&A's attorneys and requested that the facts set out in this letter be deposed to in an affidavit by Mr. Narsai, and we requested that that be provided by, at the latest, Friday of last week. We received communication on Friday to indicate that that would not be possible, as Mr. Narsai was traveling and on business, and the undertaking has been that he will provide it, I think it was by the latest Thursday this week. So that is where we are. That's why I'm not referring Mr. Mieni to an affidavit,
Yes,
but
okay.
we are in the process of securing one that will attest to the facts set
Yes.
out in this letter.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Mieni, what happened in response to the summons is that this letter was furnished with V&A's account of the way in which this payment came about, and then all of those documents that I've taken you to are what V&A provided to the Commission as evidence of the reports it says it received from Premier
Yes.
as the basis for the payment made to Premier. Okay, so I'd like to take you to what V&A says about its understanding of this arrangement, and you'll find that over the page at page 9. So at page 9, what is recorded here, and I'm going to read it into the record and then ask for your comment at various points. What is stated at the top of paginated page 9 is, in order to give context to the above-mentioned documents, we are instructed to advise the following. A. V&A Consulting was approached by Premier Attraction 1016 Pty Limited. I think that's an error because you're not a Pty Limited, are you? You're a CC. During the course of early 2015, wherein it advised, and then there are a series of things that V&A says Premier said to it. The first is that Premier was the development manager and representative of Octix Holdings in respect of a privately owned project described as Mzinoni Extension 11 Bethel Mpumalanga. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, your previous evidence, as I have it, Mr. Mieni, is that you were neither the development manager nor the representative of Octix. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So this statement is false in those two respects. Is that correct?
Yes.
V&A goes on and says that it understood from Premier that in its aforementioned capacity, Premier had already attended to the initial phases of the project, including the establishment of the township. The work that had been done and disbursements incurred was 2 million rand. That, I take it from your previous testimony, is also false. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, and the reports show there's no Premier attraction report prior.
And then they go on, and V&A records that Premier indicated to it that the project had reached a stage where it required V&A to take over the management of the project and to provide professional services, including that of architecture, quantity surveying, engineering, and project management. Is that also false?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even make sense. If we had the project and we've already done all these reports, why would we hand it over to somebody else?
So your answer is it is false.
Yes, false.
And at 4 on that page, Roman 4, that the client Octix was prepared to appoint V&A Consulting to provide the aforementioned services, those ones we've just referred to, with Premier continuing to act as the client's representative. Is that also false?
Which part?
Well, you tell me any part of it that's false.
Well, Octix clearly was prepared to appoint V&A because they did, and to provide the services above, which without seeing the scope of services, I assume that's what it included. But as Premier, we never acted as the
client's
representative of the client.
Thank you. So that last...
I'm sorry, and you didn't tell V&A that Octix wanted you to continue to act as their representative?
I definitely did not tell them that. Maybe the owner of V&A assumed.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you can assume if I'm getting documents and passing them, you might think I'm a representative, but no, that was never the case.
Okay. I'd then like to leave this page. We will return to it in a moment.
Sure.
Because amongst the documents that V&A provided to the Commission is an agreement that was concluded between itself and Octix. And I'd like to take us there if we may. You'll find it in the same exhibit DD 27, and you will find it at page 213.
Okay.
Feel free to page through the agreement if it will assist in refreshing your memory. My question is whether you've seen this agreement before.
It's possible, but I don't think so, because there would have been no need for me to.
Do you want to page through a little bit and see if anything reminds you or not, or you are quite clear?
Yeah, I'm quite clear.
Okay.
I don't think I would have had any part in this agreement.
Okay.
See, this is the agreement that V&A provides to the Commission as evidence of the basis for its 2 million rand payment to Premier. Okay. The first thing that is noteworthy about the agreement at page 213, but before I get there, could you just tell us who the parties are to this agreement on the face of it, Mr. Mieni?
Parties: client Octix Holdings, consultant V&A Consulting.
And what services was V&A Consulting going to provide in accordance with this agreement?
Professional services.
And then there is a sort of summary in brackets there Can you help us decipher that?
It's not quite clear.
So what seems to be written is PM, comma, architect, comma, QS, and then C hash ENG,
Indeed.
civil engineering.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then S/ENG, maybe sewer engineering, E/ENG, electrical engineering, M/ENG, mechanical engineering, W/ENG, maybe waste engineering. Chair, we are speculating. I
Yes.
understand from Mr. Mieni,
Yeah.
you don't have knowledge of this
No,
agreement.
I don't.
Could you just assist us with what is recorded on the front page as the agreement date?
24/07/2015.
That was after V&A had paid you the 2 million, wasn't it?
Yes.
Does that strike you as odd?
No.
No, why would it not be odd that the agreement in terms of which V&A was appointed to this project only occurred after it had made payment to you?
I can't answer for VNA and Optics, so I don't know. Maybe
You
this
see-
was a second agreement that they had signed. Who knows? I don't know. So we can't rely on it being the only one.
Yes, no, I think Ms. Hofmeyer expected you to say you find it odd that they come up with an agreement that was signed after you had been paid, because you would have expected, and I think Ms. Hofmeyer canvassed that with you earlier on, that their agreement, V&A's agreement on your version with the developer would have preceded your being brought in. So if now they come up with an agreement that happened after the payment, one would have expected your answer to be, yes, I find this odd. But you said, no, you don't find it odd.
Chair, if you follow the logic as per the documents that are here, yes, I find it odd. But I don't find it odd because of my understanding of the project.
So is it a
For
question
instance-
of your answer is yes and no?
My answer
Yes,
is
it's
yes.
odd, but
At
no,
the
it's
face of
not
it,
odd.
it is odd. But my understanding of the project and where the project came from, the limited information that I have. For instance, my understanding is that Optics actually had a different consulting company prior to V&A even coming in. A lot of reports, as you can see there, 2014, etc. So a lot of work would have been done prior. So to rely on an agreement signed on the 24th, this agreement could have been making amendments to the original agreement. I don't know. But what I do know is that as of 2014, there was already work being done here. So I would have assumed that there would have been an agreement, whether written or verbal, but at the very least, there would have been a scope of services. And everybody would know exactly what they would make out of it. So I don't want to rely on a document that I don't have context. I can't say.
Except that V&A puts this up as the agreement that brought it into the project.
That's what they are saying. They also say I was a lead, but they
And a
can't provide.
representative, and
But
you
they
were
can't.
not.
Yeah, but they can't provide an agreement to that. So at least if they were providing agreements, I would say fine, they are correct. But I'm actually was even saying to you that some of these reports that you mentioned, I was quite clear. I was not involved. So, people will say what they have to say.
I'm not sure I understand why you say you don't find it odd. I understand when you say you find it odd that they put up an agreement that they say brought them into the project, that agreement having been signed after payment had been made to you. When you find that odd, I understand. I don't understand why you don't find it odd, because you say you find it both odd and not odd.
So all I'm saying, Chair, is that this may not be the only agreement that was signed. Unfortunately, I just don't have the records. So in that sense, because yes, it is odd that I would be paid prior to an agreement being signed, but I'm saying that never happened. That's not how I conduct myself.
Yes,
So,
but if they are correct,
yes,
that this is the agreement that brought them into the project,
then it will be odd.
then it would be odd.
Yes, Chair. It will
Okay.
be very odd.
Your evidence a moment ago was you don't receive payments prior to agreements being in place. You don't conduct your business that way, is that correct?
Yes.
So where was the agreement?
Sorry, you said I don't receive payments prior to?
Agreements being in place?
No, I never said agreements being in place.
Apologies, what
But there has
was
to
your
be a
evidence?
reason for a payment, so I don't just receive payment for no reason. So the reason could have been, for instance, we have a verbal agreement and an arrangement. We have a scope of services that's sent to us, which is not necessarily an agreement. We execute and we get paid.
Is that the basis for your receiving the 2 million rand payment from V&A?
What do you mean?
The evidence you've just given. A verbal agreement in terms of which you got a scope of services at some point, you delivered work on it, and you got paid 2 million rand by V&A.
So I'm not saying it's a verbal agreement because I cannot recall, but I'm saying there would have been an agreement of sorts, whether verbal or written.
So
Number
it
two, there would have been a scope of services, and there would have been an agreement prior of the amount of money that would be paid for those works. So, at that point, then we would have.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. I understood your previous evidence to be there was no written agreement between yourselves and V&A.
I said I cannot recall whether there is a written agreement or not.
So
It's possible that it could have been or it could not have been. Possible that it was verbal, possible that it was written. I cannot say for sure right now.
But there's a legally binding agreement in terms of which you were to be paid 2 million rand for the work that you did on design for the structures. Is that correct, Mr. Mieni?
Yes, legally binding. I'm not
Well, you
exactly sure.
you might
but
not know about
yes,
legally binding,
yes,
but as far as you are concerned, there was an agreement.
Yes.
That's why you did the work.
Yes.
You
Yes,
wouldn't do the work if there was no agreement.
Yes, Chair.
What you don't know is whether it was written
Yes.
or it was verbal.
Yes, Chair.
And as far as you concerned, you did the work
Yes,
and you got paid.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, and to go back to the scope of the work, I don't think you can be in doubt that there was scope of work for you.
Yes.
Because what
Yes,
would you
Chair.
be doing if you
Yes.
don't know
Yes,
where your
definitely.
limits are?
Yes, Chair.
So you are able to say there would have been an agreement on the scope of work,
Yes, Chair.
there would have been an agreement on the payment,
Yes, Chair.
the amount, and you are saying that by the time you got paid, you would have done the work and you would have finished the work. Am I right?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
And you have no records of any of that, correct?
Yes.
Do you think Optics might have records?
I'm hoping someone does so that they can sort of clarify this, but
Yes.
I don't know.
That would be helpful. Let's go to page 216. We're still in the agreement there.
Yes.
I'd like to look at that page at clause 1.1.4. Could you read into the record what is defined there, please?
Client's representative means a representative designated by the client and so named in the schedule to act with complete authority on his behalf and who shall be available at all reasonable times.
Thank you. I'd then like to go to the schedule that's referred to there, and let's see who is indicated as the client representative in this agreement. You'll find that at page 227.
Yes?
Who is indicated at the top of the page as the client representative under this agreement?
It says name Premier Attraction.
But you deny that you were the representative under
Yeah,
this
but-
agreement, correct?
Maybe there was an error, ma'am, because the address is not our address. That can be verified at CIPC. It's never been. The number, cell phone number, is not my number. It's never been. The email moketi@yahoo.co.uk is obviously not me. So I don't know who would have done this and put this together, but we can't just rely on Premier Attraction when everything else is not correct.
So in other words, you are saying that you can see that on this page, your close corporation is recorded as having been the client's representative, but you are saying that that was not done with your permission or consent.
No, Chair, I'm saying I'm not sure what happened. So Premier Attraction was a shelf company, just maybe to give you background as well. So the reason why mine is 1016 is because there is a premier attraction 1, 2, 3, all the way, right? So this just says premier attraction. Doesn't say 1016, which you have to be specific to be talking about my entity, number one. Number two, I am then saying the address, the email, the cell phone number, all of that information has never been my information or my company's information.
Yes.
So we might be confusing premier attraction with premier attraction 1016. That can be verified with CIPC. There's many of them. So without the 1016, I think it becomes difficult to attribute it to my company.
So is this a fabricated page of the agreement,
I
do you
can't
think?
say whether it's fabricated, ma'am. I've never, I don't know.
But you played no role as the client representative under the agreement between Optics and V&A Consulting, is that correct?
No.
I think the answer is yes if you agree with me.
Sorry, if?
If you agree with me, your
Oh,
answer
yes,
has
I
to be
agree
yes
with you.
for the
Yes,
record.
sorry, I agree with you.
Okay, let's go over to where else you are referred to in this agreement. You'll find that at page 229.
Okay.
At page 229, there's a clause there, A5, about a third of the way down, headed documents. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it lists the documents that comprise the agreement. It's the agreement. There's Annexure A, the schedule. There's Annexure B, scope of services. And then there's Annexure C. And what's been written there in hand is, as per the brief and documents submitted by Talente Mieni. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then under that it says signed original documents held by, and then what's been written in there, V&A Consulting dash as handed over by T. Mieni.
Yes.
Did you have any involvement in these recordals in this agreement?
No.
And I have your previous evidence to be it is false that you handed over these documents to V&A Consulting insofar as that was the basis for the payment you received from V&A. Is that correct?
Yes. So are you suggesting I should pay us?
I think let me
We have to
clarify
unpack it.
that.
Yes.
I think what he said, Ms. Hofmeyer, is he may have handed over to V&A various documents
Yes.
on behalf of the
Optics.
developer. Yeah, okay.
But not, sorry, and it was a composite question, so I do apologize. I understand your evidence, Mr. Mieni, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, to be at some point you may have handed over documents to V&A.
Yes, yes.
But not as the basis upon which you were to be paid the 2 million rand. Is
No.
that correct?
No.
So who would have been putting these recordals into this agreement without your knowledge and based on false facts?
I'm not sure whether, when you say false facts, but I'm not sure who would have also done the agreement. I would assume the parties listed would have done the agreement, but I don't see false facts.
Well, we've already established one, which is that you were not the client's representative, and that's
Yes, but-
reflected at page 227,
But
correct?
as I pointed out, that's premier attraction. It doesn't refer to 1016. So legally, in fact, that doesn't even talk to my entity. It was a different entity altogether if it just says premier attraction.
But would you agree that if you have a close corporation whose name includes premier attraction,
Yes, Chair.
even if that's not officially the complete name,
Yes, Chair.
and you are the sole member
Yes,
of that close corporation, and that reference to premier attraction, and the document says the client's representative is premier attraction, and later in the same document there is a reference. Let me translate. There is a reference. What does it say here? There is a reference to Talente Mieni,
Yes, Chair.
one may be forgiven to think that the premier attraction they're talking about is your one.
I agree, Chair.
You agree? Okay, thank you.
And sorry, you paused on my description of some of the facts recorded in this agreement as being false. I'd like to draw your attention at 229 to the recordal against Annexure C, just before the middle of the page. It says there, as per brief and documents submitted by Talente Mieni, right? What I'm interested in there is brief, okay, because the reference to brief ties in with the VNA account of how it came into this arrangement, the account that you say is false. And let me explain why that is.
Yes.
VNA's version before the Commission is that you, Premier Attraction, were originally playing the development manager role. You wanted out, but by that stage you'd incurred certain expenses, you'd contracted to certain subcontractors, and so you needed to be paid out effectively by VNA when they came into your position. So it's in that context that the brief is the briefing from you, previous project manager, to VNA, new project manager. But I understand your evidence to be that that did not take place. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think maybe we're referring to brief maybe in a legal sense of when you client briefs, but this maybe could have just been a document to say.
No, but it
this is the
says
brief
and
of-
documents, so it's something other than the documents.
Yes, so I'm saying it could have. So the documents you referred to was a sewer report, etc., etc.
What's your understanding of brief in this context?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain, Chair. I'm saying a brief could have just been a two-pager from the developer to say, this is what we want to be done, etc., etc. Now, me passing that document on doesn't mean I authored that document. So I...
Yes, but is it correct that your understanding of brief in this context is that it refers to the mandate being given by the client for the work to be done by VNA?
I don't understand that, Chair.
You
Mandate
don't
to-
understand it that way?
Can you please repeat it, please, Chair?
Okay,
I
all
don't
right.
think I
Okay.
understood.
I remember I asked you what your understanding of
Yes.
the meaning of brief in this context.
Yes.
Now, my understanding of it, and I want to check with you if you have the same understanding, is that it refers to the mandate that VNA was being given by the client, that this brief came via you, that VNA got the brief or the document or that contained the mandate, or they were told, maybe it was verbal, the brief,
Yeah,
by
so-
you what they were required to do.
Yeah, so Chair, I don't have an understanding because I don't have context. So
You
I
don't
don't know
have
this
it,
document.
yeah.
It's difficult to say what he was
Yes.
referring to.
Yes,
I can't say.
yes, okay, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair. And you'll see the other place where there's a reference made to Premier Attraction is at the bottom of that page, 229, where the professional fees that are being agreed between VNA and Optics are set out. You'll see their professional fees for this project shall be 20.31%, inclusive of 25% discount on tariff. And the amount of 2 million paid to Premier Attraction. Do you see that?
Yes, I see it.
Did you have any knowledge prior to today that this is how the payment of your 2 million rand was recorded between Optics and VNA?
No.
Do you read this in the same way as I do, which is to suggest that VNA is going to have a claim against Optics for the 2 million rand that it paid to you?
A claim? I would assume so, yes, because we're all providing services to Optics, so Optics would have had to pay everybody involved, including Premier Attraction.
Well, it didn't pay Premier Attraction. The arrangement was VNA would pay it and then VNA would be reimbursed by Optics. Is that as you understand this recordal?
Yes.
Just tell you.
I'm sorry. Looking at the reference to Premier Attraction at the bottom of that page, namely 229, the one we were looking at just now. Looking at the fact that there's a reference to premier attraction on that page, same reference, namely premier attraction on page 227. It seems to me that one can now accept that when whoever wrote premier attraction, and I think the handwriting is the same, at page 227 as client's representative must have been meaning your premier attraction.
Agreed, Chair.
You'd accept that?
Agreed, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Meany, I'd like to go back to page 9 of Exhibit DD 27 because I said I'd return there. That is where V&A sets out its account of these facts for the Commission.
Yes.
And I pick it up there, Mr. Meany, at paragraph 2B, because it's here that V&A, after setting out the background, explains...
I'm sorry, Ms. Hofmeyer. Did you deliberately leave out Roman figure 5?
I did...
You did?
Well, for my purposes...
You didn't refer to it. I just want to know that it's not oversight.
It wasn't oversight.
Okay,
It wasn't pertinent at the time, but I'm happy to include it for completeness. Maybe we should just read it into the record.
Yeah, maybe to completeness. Yeah.
Because we'd got to Roman 4, Mr. Meany, before we moved to the agreement. But what V&A also records at Roman 5 on page 9 of Exhibit 27, DD 27, is amongst the things that it alleges Premier told it, is that it was expected of V&A to provide the aforesaid services and that V&A would start receiving payment for the said services once funding for the development had been secured, as is the norm in projects of this nature. And then at B is where V&A records...
Maybe for the sake of completeness again, I take it you deny that you told V&A what is reflected in Roman figure 5. They say you...
Oh, yes, no.
Yeah, you deny that, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
All right.
If we go to 2B, that is where V&A explains the basis for it paying Premier 2 million rand. It says V&A accepted the aforementioned appointment on an understanding that it, V&A, would pay Premier the aforementioned 2 million rand for all the reports, documentation, and work completed that had been furnished to Premier by the various consultants that it had appointed. Do you see that?
Yes, I see.
Your evidence before this commission is that you didn't appoint those consultants, correct?
No.
And you didn't procure the rendering of those reports, correct?
No.
So V&A paid you 2 million rand for work on your version that you did not do, correct?
Let's put it this way. To the extent that V&A says it paid you the 2 million rand because you had provided certain reports and documentation, that is not true as far as you are concerned.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, Chair, but for work completed, yes.
For work completed, that you say that was true.
And also, Chair, if I may just point out, I think something that
Yes.
is quite obvious. It says that V&A Consulting then commenced work on the project during or about March 2015. So
Yes.
now they've given us an agreement for July of that year. They're saying they started the work, and that's why I was saying it's not odd that an agreement could be, showing another date, whereas our payment will show that because we did start work prior to us being paid. And I think that line there just confirms what I was saying.
Are you saying that elsewhere on this document?
Just on C, Chair, just below where you're reading, same page, but C.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So
the point you are making is that on their version, it appears that they say they started the work in March 2015.
Yes, Chair.
But we do know that if the agreement that they have put up as the agreement between themselves and the developer, that agreement was concluded in July
July.
2015.
Yes, so
Okay.
they can come and explain that, why that's the case.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear about this. V&A, as recorded in 2B on page 9 of Exhibit 27, paid Premier Attraction 2 million rand for work that it believed Premier had done, but Premier had not done. Is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
or maybe he was mistaken. Maybe his memory also.
Well, I'm not sure if you intend saying what you have just said, because you qualified your answer earlier on in relation to 2B by saying that it's not true that they made that payment for reports that you had prepared. But what you did say is that they paid you for work that you had completed.
Yes, Chair, I think you've said the same thing. You said reports that were prepared.
Yeah.
So yes, so the work that we would have prepared, yes.
Yeah.
But the reports here actually
Are
indicate
separated, yeah.
who prepared them.
Yes.
So those ones will not be paid for work that we would not have done. We would have been
Yeah.
paid for work we would have done. But I
Yes.
was saying that I may have passed the documents on to them. And
But the challenge, Mr. Mieni, with that is that those are not the reports that V&A said it was paying 2 million for. These reports that you have no records of, that you say dealt with the structural design of the houses.
yeah, I can't answer for V&A.
V&A's version is they paid 2 million because they received a whole lot of reports that you provided to them from subcontractors who were owed monies because of the works that they'd been doing for you as project developer. And your evidence is that is false.
I'm sure if you ask those companies, they don't even know me.
We have asked the companies and they don't know you. You're absolutely correct about that. But what I'm interested in is that V&A says it paid you 2 million rand for a series of reports that it believed you had procured and were owed for. And your evidence is that is false, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And they also did not pay you for the reports that you have no records of, that your evidence today indicates dealt with design of the structures of the houses. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily reports. So for instance, we would meet at their offices and we would work on those designs. So it's not necessarily that you're going to find an actual report, but
How
you
many
might find
times-
drawings, you might find...
How many
all manner
times
of
did you
things.
meet?
I don't know, many times. I can't recall how many times.
5 or 10?
I can't recall, many times. I can't
More
recall
than
how many
10?
times. I can't recall, ma'am. Many times, though.
Well, I just need some indication of what many times is, because you were paid 2 million rand for this work, Mr. Mieni, and I'd like to understand what went into the work that produced a payment of 2 million rand. So can you give me an order of
I
magnitude?
I can't say how many times we met.
Thank you.
So, did you provide V&A with any report that related to work that your Premier Attraction had done in regard to this project?
Okay, so not a report maybe in the sense that you say.
A written report?
Not a report in this sense, but
Yeah.
we would have provided them work that we have done, which required us to meet or not to meet. It didn't really matter. We would have provided it to them, and I indicated earlier that they would then compile all that information, put it together, and finally submit to the client. So there may not be a specific report saying this has been compiled, etc., but we would have done our services and handed over whatever it is that we would have needed to them.
Does that answer mean, one, Premier Attraction did not provide V&A with any report of the work, any written report of the work that they had done? Or does it mean you are not sure whether somewhere there may be a report lying that relates to work that you did and a report that you may have provided to V&A? You just don't know.
Yes, Chair.
I don't
So
remember.
somewhere there could be a report lying, but our services were support services to VNA and what they had to do. So we would not have compiled an actual report per se, but we would have done work and handed it over to them for them to then combine with whatever other aspects, and then they would send that information to the
Would there
client.
be something in writing, whether you call it a report or an email or a letter, that would have come from Premier Attraction to VNA that says, this is how far we are now with the work we are supposed to do, and maybe once you had completed the work, maybe an email or letter that you would have sent to them to say, we have now completed the work?
It is possible, Chair, but also, as I said, we used to meet. So those were the status updates, to meet and
Yes.
say, this is where we are, this is what we have done, etc. Although I can't really recall exactly, but that's what would happen. And,
But do you have a clear recollection that some of your progress reports would have been verbal, others in writing by way of an email or letter, or are you not sure?
Oh, yes, they would have been verbal because Mr. Nasrai was based in Durban, so he would only come up for the bigger meetings. There would have been maybe phone calls to his team that was based in Johannesburg, and there may have been emails as well. I can't.
And I take it there would have been invoices that Premier Attraction sent to VNA?
Yes, I would definitely have invoiced for the 2 million rand, yes.
Okay, Ms. Hoffman.
Did you invoice along the way as you were doing this work and having the meetings?
No, we would have invoiced it probably at the end when it was time for us to be paid. Yeah.
How did you know when it was time for you to be paid?
When the work would have been completed.
And you made a point earlier in your testimony in response to the chair's question that what you were paid for were the support services that you provided to VNA. Did I have that correct?
What I was saying was our services were supporting what VNA was doing,
Yes,
so not providing support services per se.
indeed. The challenge I have with that, Mr. Mieni, is VNA doesn't believe it was paying you for that reason, correct?
Yes.
It believed it was paying you for work you did not do, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
The work that you say VNA asked you to do, would it have been work that they didn't have capacity to do? In other words, why did they bring you in?
Yes. So, yes, capacity broadly, Chair, could have been at the time skills, expertise, could have been time, not enough consultants, could have been a range of things depending on what they needed to deliver at that time. So,
And it would have been capacity or skills or expertise that Premier Attraction had.
yes, Chair. Had or could source, yes.
Just repeat the last
Had
bit.
or could source,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a follow-up question on that. I understood you previously to say in your testimony that the scope of services that Premier was required to fulfill related to design work for structures.
Yeah,
Is
so-
that correct?
Yeah, so what I was explaining is that it would not have related to the work that you spoke about, sewer, for instance,
Yes.
because that's below the ground. So
Yes.
I was talking about that it would have spoken directly to the actual structure.
Right.
Whether it's- Yes.
Anything else in your scope of services?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I can't recall what the scope of service was that I mentioned, but it would have been around the top structure.
Mr. Mieni, I have to indicate to you that I have a concern with a situation in which your company was paid 2 million rand for a scope of services that you can't now recall what it included. How did you compile your invoice for 2 million rand if you, as you sit here today, don't know what the scope of services was for that work?
Ma'am, we compiled our invoice after work done in 2015. It's 5 years ago. I conduct a lot of businesses, Chair, and I do a lot of transactions. I cannot recall a 2 million rand transaction. I just simply cannot recall the details of what was happening at the time.
So as you sit here today, you have no certainty as to what work you did to merit the payment of 2 million rand.
It would have been consulting work around the top structure.
The top
the
structure.
housing, the actual housing design, etc. That's what it would have been around. I can't say for certain what it was.
Then I want to put it to you, Mr. Mieni, that it's highly unlikely that that type of work would have been done without there being a single written record of the work you performed on the top structures. Do you accept that?
Yes, I accept it.
And if we were to go back to Optics and V&A, we've already gone to yourself for records, and no one has a single shred of paper referring to this work that you did, entitling you to 2 million rand on the top structures. Do you accept that that would be concerning?
Yes, it will be concerning.
I would then like to move to the second set of payments that we were going to look at today, and that's the payments that Premier makes to an entity called EC Bonello.
Yes.
Just to get us right in the chronology, Mr. Mieni, you received the 2 million rand from V&A on the 19th of June 2015, is that correct?
Correct.
And thereafter, Premier made 3 payments to EC Bonello. Do you recall the dates of those payments?
No, not.
They were
sent them to us, but
we did send them to you. I don't think it's contentious, so I'll just refresh your memory then. On the 24th of October 2015, Premier paid 1 million.
From what page are you reading?
Chair, I'm reading
is it
from
your
my
notes?
But it is in fact recorded. I can give it to you. It's recorded in the Regulation 10.6 directive that was issued to Mr. Mieni. And so both of you can follow. You can find that at Exhibit DD 27 at page 234.
Yes.
You will see there, Mr. Mieni, under paragraph 1.1b, we start to record there the payments.
I sometimes hear like you saying Miss Mieni.
Oh, I do apologize. I must be very clear that it is Mr.
Am I hearing
Mieni.
right? Do you hear the same thing?
I wasn't really listening.
You're not
I'm
paying
sure.
attention.
I do apologize, Chair.
Okay.
I'll be very clear. And just for the transcribers, today's evidence is given by Mr. Mieni. So if I ever make an error in my pronunciation, the transcript will reflect correctly. Right, so we pick it up at paragraph 1.1b on page 234, because that is where we deal with the 3 payments made out from Premier to EC Bonello.
Yes.
The first of those, it's recorded at B, occurred on the 24th of October 2015, and that was 1 million rand paid to EC Bonello. The second payment was an amount of 1,150,000 rand, and that was paid on the 11th of December 2015 to EC Bonello. And the third payment was a payment made on the 2nd of February 2016, and that was an amount of 1 million rand to EC Bonello. Now, you responded in your affidavit answering the directive received that we've just looked at about these payments. And I'd like to take you there. It's at page 2 of the bundle in front of you, Exhibit DD 27. Could you please read into the record what you say at paragraph 8 on that page of your affidavit?
Okay. In respect to EC Bonello Construction, the transactions made by Premier Attraction 1016 were business transactions carried out in the normal course of Premier Attraction's business activities. However, I do not have any recollection of the nature of the said business transactions due to the fact that a significant period of time has passed since doing business with the said company.
And at paragraph 9?
I do not have any form of documentation relating to the business transactions made with the said company due to the significant period of time that has passed.
Mr. Mieni, given the significant period of time, why can you be sure that these transactions related to the business of Premier Attraction 1016?
To business, the company, and I was conducting it that way. So I would assume that it's business-related transactions.
What else can you assist us with in relation to the payment to EC Bonello Construction? What could it have related to in the course of Premier's business?
Well, nothing but business-related transactions.
But I understood your evidence earlier to be the business related to property. I didn't get many other specifics. So what part of Premier's business would this payment have related to?
So
I think he said earlier that Premier Attraction does a lot of things.
it has over the years, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
So
all right.
in 2015, 2016, what part of Premier's business would have associated it with EC Bonello?
I can't say for sure because, as I said, we've done many things. I mean, an opportunity can come today in energy. I'll go for it. So I can't say what it was at that time. All I know is that EC Bonello was a construction company, or is a construction company. So I would assume it would be around that. I don't know. I can't say.
Does Premier Attraction, or did Premier Attraction over the years at some stage or another do construction as well?
Yes, we have done and attempted construction projects, yes.
Okay.
And I understood your evidence earlier to be it must have had to do with Premier's business activities because Premier doesn't make payments other than payments associated with its business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess.
Mr. Mieni, the witness who seeks to give evidence in camera later today will say in his evidence that there has never been a business relationship between Premier and EC Bonello, and that these payments had nothing to do with any services rendered to Premier. Do you have a response to that?
I can't comment on what the witness will be saying or has said.
When Ms. Hofmeyer tells you what the witness will say, she's giving you an opportunity to say what the witness will be saying will be true, or what the witness will be saying is will not be true,
Yes.
or is not probable because of this and that. He's giving you a chance to deal with that
Oh, yes.
witness's evidence because that evidence may be implicating you or your close correlation in some wrongdoing.
No, thank you for clarifying, Chair. No, it's just it's a bit difficult to speak the way of some of these people because I have a lot of respect for them. But what the witness will be saying is not truthful. Yes, Chair.
Do you have any evidence or documents to support that his version is false and yours is true?
Which version?
The version that your version is, I paid these 3 tranches of R1 million and a bit more in relation to the business activities of Premier, correct?
Yes.
He will come and say there is and has never been a business relationship between EC Bonello and Premier. And what you've indicated to the chair is you say his version is false, and so my follow-up is, do you have a single document available to you to support your version that these amounts were paid pursuant to the business activities of Premier?
No, I don't have a document, Chair, but, it's quite difficult because he's not being truthful in saying what he's saying. And in actual fact, to prove that there was a business relationship, a more recent transaction, which I have recollection of, actually, was a development and construction project in Esikawini. And although I have not, I had not thought about it, so I had not been able to look for documents which could be there, could not be there. But it went as far as him sending us quotations, designs, all of these things. So it is untrue that we've never had a business relationship. completely untrue.
That is not his evidence. Let me be clear. His evidence is at the time of these transactions, there was no business relationship.
Okay, that's fine. It's untrue, but that's fine.
Would EC Bonello have sent Premier Attraction some invoice before Premier Attraction paid these amounts to them?
They should have, they would have. I would
Yes.
assume so, Chair. But, unfortunately,
Especially
I
if
don't
it
have-
was business.
Yes.
Yes. But you say you can't remember what it is exactly that EC Bonello would have done for Premier Attraction to be entitled to payment of, at least one of the payments is about $1 million or more, to be paid such a lot of money.
Yeah, Chair. Specifically with those payments, I can't recall. As I said, though, what I can recall is that there was that Esikawini project which we engaged on. I'm not sure how far that went, but
But you say that's
would-
much later, is that correct?
yeah, I think there would have been.
Much later.
Yeah, because it's something that I have
You can
a little
remember.
bit of a memory on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't want to.
Wouldn't Premier Attraction be a relatively small entity so that if it paid anybody R1 million, it would be something to remember, or is it not so small?
I'm not sure, Chair.
I just think you told me that in terms of staff, sometimes it's just you
Yeah.
only, sometimes you and one person. That gave me the impression it's a small entity.
So what I was
And
explaining.
I would have thought that if a small entity pays anybody R1 million, that would be something to remember.
Yes.
What it was about.
Yes, Chair. So what I was explaining in regards to the staff issue. For instance, if you go to my offices now, you'll find people there. They work. Some people are employed by company X, other through company Y, etc., depending on what they're there to do. So what I was specifically talking about was not that I don't have employees or I've never had employees. I was simply saying on the books of Premier Attraction, I can't recall how many there would have been, but at the time there would have been just me as a sole member, which is the case now, if I'm correct. And then specifically relating to the payment of R1 million, we've submitted some bank statements that were requested on these transactions, and the amounts do go a bit higher than R1 million in those statements. So I wouldn't say it was a big company, Chair, but the amounts did go a
Would
bit
you
higher
protest
than R1 million.
if it was described as a small entity?
No, it's definitely a small entity,
Oh,
Chair.
okay,
Definitely
okay.
a small entity.
Okay,
But
okay. Yes,
the amounts do
but
go a
it
bit
does.
higher than
It does.
R1
It does handle larger transactions than
just
R1
R1 million,
Yeah.
yes, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Miani, apologies. It was not just R1 million. It was in excess of R3 million between October of 2015 and February of 2016. I just want to be clear as to your evidence today. Is it that, despite the fact that Premier Attraction paid R3 million over that period to EC Bonello, as you sit here today, you cannot tell us what that work was?
Yeah, can't say.
And you have no records of any invoices from EC Bonello or any other documentary evidence of the work that you allege was done by EC Bonello to merit those payments. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I'd then like to just ask what your...
Well, I just wanted to say that that comes across to me as quite extraordinary. If an entity, a small entity, I think we agreed we can't describe it as small entity,
Yes.
pays to another company over a few months R3 million, but the owner of the business can't remember what work was done for them to justify paying that amount.
Yes.
Do you want to say something about
Chair,
that?
it was 2015, and as I've
Yes.
said, since then, We have done a lot of transactions.
Yes, okay.
I cannot specifically recall.
Okay,
what,
maybe with large amounts.
Maybe if we're talking a very big amount, then I'll maybe recall, but
Yeah.
I really cannot, Chair, recall. I really,
Oh,
I can't
okay.
say.
So would it be correct to say that you are saying that payment of 3 million rand by Premier Attraction over those months at the time, with everything that may have happened after, which might have involved Premier Attraction being involved in larger transactions, is not something that you can remember what it was
Well,
about?
I can't say whether it was involved in larger transactions or not, but I'm saying, Chair, from the information that we submitted, you can clearly see that there were larger amounts
Yes.
that were moving in the account. So, I mean, and it's over 5-6 months or so, these transactions. It's not like
Yes.
it's a once-off lump sum of 3 million rands. So it's very difficult to track back and say what it was.
Ms. Meehan, you've drawn attention to the state of the business at the time that these transactions were made from a sort of turnover or cash flow perspective. That is why I began the questioning today to ask you for an indication of the turnover of the business, but you weren't able to give me an indication of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can't say.
Do you know that before the 2 million was paid from V&A to Premier, the balance in the account was 1,449 rand and 79 cents?
Okay,
Do you accept that?
I can accept it, yes.
Yes. And then over the period where you paid the 3 million rand, the highest amount in the account was 9,744,608 rand. Do you
Sure.
accept that?
Sure.
Do you accept that 3 million rand is quite a substantial proportion of that?
Yeah, but you are looking at 3 bank statements that are highlighting the specific transactions over a 6-month period. We don't know where the account
Yes.
was in
I only
between.
have these documents to go with, Mr. Mieni, because you won't tell this commission what your general turnover is in the business.
It's not that I won't. It's, I'm saying I can't say. I can't really recall what we were making in 2015. I can't say.
Okay. I'll leave that question there. I'd then like to know what your relationship is to Ms. Duduzile Mieni.
She's my mother.
Thank you. The witness who has applied to give evidence in camera later will say the following about the monies that were received into the account. The EC Bonello account, which the witness says had nothing to do with any business relationship at the time with Premier. And I'm going to tell you this because I do need to know if you have any knowledge about these facts. The witness will say that your mother, Ms. Mieni, called him after those deposits were made and instructed him what to do with the money. For the first tranche, there were a series of instructions that cash be withdrawn and made available to her. And in relation to the second 2 payments, that there was an instruction that those monies be paid less a VAT portion to the Jacob Zuma Foundation. Do you have any knowledge of those facts?
No, I don't have any knowledge. It doesn't make sense.
And then one more point that will come up in his evidence. The Commission first communicated with your lawyers on the 24th of January this year. It was a Friday. Do you recall that at all?
It's possible, yes. Yes, sure.
And pursuant to the Commission making contact with your lawyers and asking you questions about these transactions, the witness will indicate that his daughter received a phone call from your mother, Ms. Mieni. My question to you is, after you were alerted to the Commission's questions, did you relay that to your mother,
Yes,
Ms.
I did.
Mieni?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Chair, those are our questions. I see that we have a few minutes before the tea break. It may be appropriate, subject to questions you may have for Mr. Mieni, that we move the application now formally. We have received the supplementary affidavit, and then arrangements can be made over lunch, depending on your ruling.
Otherwise, you are done with Mr. Mieni.
Indeed.
Yes. Mr. Mieni, thank you very much for coming to give evidence. You are excused. If a need arises for the Commission to ask you to come back, we'll ask you to come back.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You are excused. Yes, let's deal with the application.
Thank you, Chair. I indicated this morning that that supplementary affidavit was being prepared by the witness. I beg leave to hand that up, if I may. Chair, before I move to the supplementary affidavit, if I may just highlight the essence of the basis upon which the person who I will now refer to as Mr. X brings an application for his evidence to be given in such a way that neither his name nor his appearance be revealed. Chair, that is the application supported by the main affidavit and supplemented by the affidavit that I've just handed up to you. Chair, the essence of the application is as follows.
Yes.
The witness indicates that he will give evidence that will implicate the persons to whom notice of today's application has already been given. I indicated this morning that those persons included Mr. Mieni, who has just given evidence, Ms. Mieni, Mr. Majola, who will give evidence tomorrow, and former President Zuma. The witness explains in his application that on the afternoon of the 24th of January, this is the point I picked up with Mr. Mieni at the end of his evidence, the witness's daughter received a telephone call from Ms. Mieni, and that occurred on the afternoon of that day. And what Ms. Mieni relayed to the witness's daughter on that call was two questions. She asked why her father was telling everyone about the funds that were facilitated through his company, and asked why her father was selling them out. That was a few hours after the Commission had first made contact with Mr. Mieni about the matters being investigated. Chair, this is not in the witness's application, but Mr. Mieni has confirmed to us moments ago that he did relay to his mother, Ms. Mieni, that he had been approached by the Commission about these matters. Chair, Mr. X further supports his application on the basis that Ms. Mieni and Mr. Majola, whom he will implicate in serious wrongdoing in his evidence, are both influential members of their community. He does accept that it is likely that they will know his identity when he gives this evidence, because he quite simply can't give the evidence but for making clear his relationship to various entities and his engagements with both Ms. Mieni and Mr. Majola. However, he still motivates for some measure of his identity not to be revealed, because he indicates in his affidavit that there are many people in the community in which he finds himself who are dependent on Ms. Mieni and Mr. Majola, and have been assisted particularly by Ms. Mieni economically over some period. And those people will not necessarily be able to identify him when he gives this evidence. But he is concerned about acts of retaliation by those individuals within the community if he is identified and publicly associated with, quote, selling out these important and influential persons. He therefore asks for a ruling that endeavors to be as faithful to the public inquiry nature of these proceedings, but also give him that measure of protection over which he has any control, and that is to not have his name or his appearance revealed while he gives his evidence here today. So, Chair, it is against that backdrop that the legal team of the Commission moves the application on his behalf. I explained the only reason we do that is because he is not legally represented. We do, however, support the application and the basis given for it. We have prepared the draft order, Chair, along the lines that you described this morning. And I beg leave just to hand that up.
Well, his affidavit should ask for leave to be referred to as Mr. X.
It
But
should
it's okay.
indeed.
It's okay. It's not a big thing.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I think, yes, it should be leave. He says he requests that
He
he's
requests,
referred to in
yeah.
that manner. No, indeed,
Yeah.
but leave would have been more appropriate.
Okay, I think what we should do is I will deal with it when you come back.
Indeed, Chair.
But I think the order must reflect that the applicant is Mr. X.
Right.
Or witness X.
Yes.
So the order must have a party. So that is that is what
We'll
should
make
be
that
there.
amendment, certainly.
But on the face of it, the draft order appears to cover, but I'll look at it further during the lunch break.
Indeed, Chair. Just from a
Yes.
logistics point of view, the witness has requested that there be an interpreter for the purposes of his
Yes.
evidence. So we will
Yes.
make all of those arrangements over the
Yes.
lunch adjournment.
Yes.
And then we can deal with the request for the in-camera proceedings and
Yeah.
then move straight into the evidence if that is convenient.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And arrangements must be made to obtain the correct certificate for the interpreter.
Yes, I'm
as you-
encouraged by the fact that I'm told the interpreter has previously interpreted in these proceedings,
Yes.
but we will make sure all
Yeah.
of the necessary documents are available.
I think your junior has dealt with
Yes.
that, and Reverend Stemela knows
Indeed.
what format the certificate must take.
Indeed.
That I'm comfortable with.
Certainly.
Yes. Okay, all right. So I'll deal with it when we resume.
Thank you, Chair.
Otherwise, we adjourn for lunch and we'll resume at 2.
Thank you.
We adjourn.
All rise.